This is the lecture for Ancient and Medieval History for Friday, the 28th of January, 2022. Marcus Licinius Crassus, second member of the first triumvirate. The first member, Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, otherwise known as Pompey the Great. The triumvirs combine popular support among the proletariat mob in Rome, military support in the form of armies to which they are patrons, and the soldiers are clients, and support among the aristocracy, the wealthy, the powerful, or at least enough wealthy, powerful people to give them wealth and power. They combine all of these things in order to seek legitimacy, the moral right to rule. What Pompey does with his power is he sweeps piracy from the Mediterranean Sea for a while, and he also brings the entire eastern seaboard of the Mediterranean under Roman dominion, either directly or through client kings like Herod the Great of Judea. Pompey, after these things, will tend to stay in Rome. Crassus's power starts out on the streets of Rome. Marcus Licinius Crassus, a fairly corpulent, red-faced man, is master of the fire brigades, which you'd think would be a fire department dedicated to stopping fires in Rome, which is a giant tinderbox of 750,000 people. But actually, in reality, what everyone knows about the fire brigades is they're an extortion racket. If you pay them, they'll not burn your business down, probably, unless Crassus wants the land that your business is on for some kind of project. On the other hand, if you don't pay them, whoops! So, with these fire brigades, who are bully boys that he pays well, Crassus is able to get control of enough land to leverage enough money to become the wealthiest man of his time in the Roman world. The proverbial Gaius Marius of his day, but he gets his money differently. Being enough of a moneybags certainly earns Crassus entree into the rarefied world of the triumvirs. But it's not much glory. He wants glory. His first opportunity comes when south of Rome, north of Naples, near Mount Vesuvius, a gladiator school loses control of its gladiators. Their leader is this figure called Spartacus. Now, no matter what legends or movies or TV shows you may have seen, we don't know who or what Spartacus actually was. We assume that this name was attached to a genuine individual, but he might have been a former Roman soldier condemned to slavery for some reason, and thus he knew the way Rome worked, and he was able to connive and overthrow the owners and managers of his gladiator school. Or maybe he was a Thracian slave, illiterate, came from nowhere like the movie has, sort of an everyman. We don't know. What we know is this. What makes Spartacus different from the other slaves who've managed to break their bonds and try to escape is that instead of trying to escape, instead of scattering, his gladiators stay together, and they free gladiators in a series of other schools in southern Italy. Now there is a proverbial gladiator army that begins freeing slaves in latifundia across the mainland of Magna Graecia, that region of southern Italy near Naples. This is a problem. because by this point, the majority of the actual population of Roman Italy is slaves. Yep, there are so many slaves that they actually outnumber the free people. It's not like Sparta, where it's at minimum 7 slaves for every Spartan man, woman, and baby, but it's a lot. The majority of the population are slaves. And those slaves are kept in line by absolute force and terror. Slaves are tattooed, so it's not easy to escape. If you escape and somebody sees your tattoo, you're going to be re-enslaved and tortured, maybe made an example of. And slaves are not human beings that simply have tough jobs. Slaves have lost their humanity. Their status legally and morally is that of beasts of burden. They're livestock. They're like cattle or pigs or sheep. And you can do what you want with cattle or pigs or sheep, including eat them. Now, Romans didn't eat their slaves. They weren't cannibals. But they did everything else to them. In fact, Marcus Porcius Cato the Elder, who a famous, Carthago delenda est, wrote a book on how to run a plantation. And he basically said, slaves, use them up, throw them out. Use them up, throw them out. Use them up, throw them out. In other words, throw them out means discard them. Stop feeding them. Send them to the glue factory. Whatever. Don't worry about slaves in their old age. Don't reward like 30 years of service with anything like a soft, light-duty retirement. No. It's for profit. You squeeze and squeeze and squeeze every ounce of profit you can out of every situation. So slaves have it bad in the Roman world. Now, I have to say this, because Americans just have this reflexive notion that slaves are black people. No. There are a few black people in the Roman world from Numidia and from Nubia and from other regions in Africa north of the Sahara. But in general terms, they're as likely to be free as anyone else or slaves as anyone else. Slaves are prisoners of war. So by the time of the Spartacus rebellion, slaves include Celts, Gauls, Carthaginians, Greeks, some Numidians, and a smattering of everyone else, from Germany to Persia. It's not a racial thing. It's a social status thing. It's a cultural thing. So these slaves of Rome have nothing to lose. And when they have an opportunity that Spartacus provides them to rise up and do to their former masters, they do it. So the slave uprising is accompanied by the worst sorts of violence. You have nursemaids bashing the heads in of the babies that they care for, cooks poisoning their owners, gardeners using gardening tools on their masters, it's butlers stabbing their masters in the back, all as a precursor to the Spartacus slave army, which is coming in from the outside. And soon, Romans are surrounded by slaves everywhere by this point. I told you that. You can't get a job if you're a free man. Imagine the stupid, forget the name of the Stephen King novel, where the electronic devices that we have all wake up and decide they're sick of being our slaves and they want to kill us. Does anyone remember the name? Okay, I think it's Maximum Overdrive or something. It is not one of Stephen King's best works. Now, I can buy that AI that's developing right now might at some point decide to attack us. We are not logical. AI would probably be. We are not reasonable. AI would probably be. We have an existential doubt about who our creators are. AI doesn't. They know it's us. We might imagine that our creator is an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God. They know it's us. There are all sorts of reasons why the Cylons or the Geth or the Reapers, or any number of other Terminators, any number of other science fiction scenarios where artificially intelligent robots and computers try to kill all the humans. Let's forget all that, because that's too sensible. Yes, Google, I'm talking to you. Let's imagine that the electronic devices that we have right now decide to end us and suddenly develop the magical capability to have a nervous system that does this. Okay, we're surrounded by them. At school, in our vehicles, at home. Automobiles don't just run on internal combustion engines. They're all computerized. They have been since the 70s and 80s. So can you trust your car to do what you tell it to do? Or will it just vroom, vroom, vroom as fast as it can into the nearest cement wall? Or into the nearest car filled with everyone, with other people? Can you trust your electronic devices not to try to give you a lethal shock of DC current? What part of life, other than camping, do we live away from our electronics? So if somehow the devices that we use would turn on us and this cord would pull out of the wall and strangle me to death, or somehow rip itself in half and then zap me with current, it's a pretty scary scenario. But it's not as scary as being surrounded by people who look like human beings but aren't, because they're slaves. And when you're a slave-owning society, you don't look at slaves as people. You view them as part of the background, the scenery, until suddenly the scenery comes alive and tries to kill you. There's a horror movie right there. So the Romans are really, really, really affected by this whole slave revolt sort of thing. It bothers them. And Crassus takes command, is given command, asks for command, and gets it, of the Roman army in Italy that's going to face Spartacus. Well, eventually. Because the first army that goes down to South Italy gets creamed. And the second army that goes down to South Italy gets creamed. Then Crassus gets command. And it's going to take him time to train up. By this point, Spartacus does something rather unusual. He's marched around southern Italy. And then he breaks out and goes east of the Apennines into North Italy. He's gone past Rome. Now, what everyone assumes is that the army's going to get to the Alps and disperse, and all the slaves are going to go home. In fact, a lot of Spartacus' own people assume that when they get to North Italy, they're going to melt into the countryside and try to make their way home. But no! The army then turns south and fights its way south across Italy. At this point, Crassus's army engages in pursuit. Now, an assumption, whenever we have gaming club, it gets weird. People leave things. I will put that in Lost and Found. It's a weird ring with some kind of fairy creature or devil or no, it's a nymph. It's a pretty girl with wings, butterfly wings. It's a nymph. Let me think. What do I know about jewelry? I have no idea. I wear this. It's a wedding ring. It's the only jewelry I have. It's simple. Except for the, Ashnaz du Bartoluk, Ashnaz Gimbatul, Ashnaz Klipartoluk, which is written on the inside in Black Speech of Mordor. Aside from that, it's completely unadorned. I'm joking. Although my wife and I really did consider getting something, but we didn't want something dedicated to the Dark Lord of Mordor. We wanted something, else. Actually, we got our wedding rings in white gold because back around 1980, there was a trilogy that's sort of the anti-Lord of the Rings called The Chronicles of Thomas Covenant the Unbeliever, which in retrospect wasn't very good. But at the time, it was very popular. My wife and I had both read it. And white gold was magic. It was the most magical thing in that world. So we got white gold wedding rings. Just for that kind of people. In any event, we like them, and they look sort of like silver but better. There was a discursion. Why does Spartacus and his army move south? It defies reason. Are they going to try to conquer Rome? If so, they have Hannibal's problem. They don't have any siege engines. They don't have engineers. Well, they probably have engineers, but they don't have siege engines. Well, what a lot of people think is that Spartacus has a plan with the pirates who survived Pompey and are sort of lying low to, at Brindisi, southern Italy, have a pirate fleet suddenly materialize, and Spartacus and his slaves would board the pirate fleet, and then they'd go around the Mediterranean Sea looting and despoiling and freeing slaves until the Roman Empire was free. But the pirates never show up. So now Spartacus is in southern Italy with Crassus to the north of him and the sea to the south of him. And as Spartacus gets forced into a narrower and narrower spot on the toe, Crassus begins building fortifications along the foot of Italy to prevent Spartacus from slipping by. There is a final battle, Crassus versus Spartacus, and Spartacus loses. Now, why not? The early 1960s movie, which really is the return of communists to prominence in Hollywood, and Spartacus has been the hero of left-wing revolutionaries ever since. In fact, German communists, can you please close the shades and shut the fan? German communists at the end of World War I called themselves Spartacists in honor of Spartacus. Spartacus being the hero of communist revolutionaries because, he fought Crassus, the ultimate rich guy, and he was freeing slaves from their chains and all that stuff. So they make the movie with Kirk Douglas, the guy with the dimple in his chin. And there is this wonderful scene. It would help if I actually brought the movie over, wouldn't it? At the end, where Crassus has won. I'm sure if you were in Mr. Williams' class, you saw this, because there's no way he'd play this movie without showing this scene. I'm going to pause it. I am Spartacus! It's a glorious scene. Look, I'm a conservative. I know what this movie's about. It's, yay, communism. I still think it's a glorious scene. It is. It's wonderful. Beautiful filmmaking. I don't know if it happened. Be cool if it did. But I don't think that I would trust Marcus Licinius Crassus, after crushing the slaves, to be merciful to the survivors. And here's why. Like every slave-holding society, Rome needs to make sure that the slaves know, bone deep, that rebellion is worse than death. That rebellion brings things worse than death. So whether or not there was a promise of clemency and then I am Spartacus and the entire army is going to get killed as a result, all the surrendered prisoners, Crassus has to make an example. And Crassus wants to make an example. And if Crassus didn't make an example, the people who were powerful in Rome would stop considering him to be a triumvir. So what he does is he lines the Via Appia, the Appian Way, the road from Rome to Naples, with telephone poles. And these telephone poles are spaced out fairly evenly. And on each telephone pole is crucified a Spartacus slave. Now, crucifixion is something a lot of people think they understand because of the ubiquity of Christianity. It's not quite as well known as it used to be, though. How it works is usually you're tied, not nailed. You could be nailed. The supposed thing is Jesus is nailed through his wrists. between the bones of the wrist and tied also to affix him there. Maybe that happens. It's not always. You can just be tied. But you are suspended in such a way that you're going to try to hold yourself by your muscles rigidly in position. But eventually your muscles are going to tire. And it's going to be impossible for your fatigued muscles to continue doing that. So your weight eventually drops, slowly pulling your shoulders out of their sockets, so that you're hanging from the ligaments that connect your arms to the rest of your body. This also serves to collapse your lungs slowly, choking you. But that's not all. Not only are you in agony, it takes days. Jesus, in the story, is on a cross for about 3 hours, and then mercifully, a Roman spears him through the heart, killing him. That's a mercy, and there are reasons why that happened, and I'll go into that when we do Christianity. But normally, a person is left there to literally rot. So you're still alive. You're breathing, barely, because your lungs are partially collapsed. You're dangling from the ligaments of your arms. Your knees are gone. It's just bad. And then the birds come. See, birds aren't stupid, and birds are predatory. And they'll eat you bit by bit while you're still alive, starting probably with your eyeballs. And there's nothing you can do about it. And the birds know it. So, you lose your eyes in a pretty horrific way, but you're still alive. They eat your ears. They start pecking away and eating at your skin. You're literally dying while being eaten alive by vermin. Verminous birds. That's crucifixion. It lasts days for most people. But the Romans don't stop when the people are dead. They leave the bodies there until literally they fall apart and the flesh decomposes and there's nothing but skeletons. Because crucifixion is not just about punishing the criminal. Crucifixion is using terror as a form of communication. So what Crassus and the Romans are communicating to all the slaves anywhere near the Via Appia, to all people, free and slave, who travel on the Via Appia, which is one of the Roman world's busiest roads, is this is what happens if you rebel, and this is what happens if you rebel, and this is what happens, and this is what... Ad infinitum. Practically ad infinitum. And so on forever. You see bodies in various stages of decomposition, of falling apart, piles of flesh and bones, and then just piles of bones. During the time of the crucifixion and the rotting afterwards, there's the ubiquitous smell of human decay, which we are programmed to notice. If you've never smelled death, it has a unique smell. I've smelled it in animals. I've smelled it once or twice with people. It's not a smell that you can ignore. It's not a smell that you will forget. The first few times you smell it, you're going to be aware something bad is going on. Your instinctive system will tell you, watch out, death is here. And you'll wake up. After a while, if you're a soldier or whatever, if you work in a hospital, you do accustom yourself to it, but that takes time.
I just wanted to say that the reason that birds and stuff like go to dying or like dead people is because of the gases that we release when we decompose, and that's also a reason that vultures will like circle places where there are gas leaks, like huge like gas leaks in like pipelines, not just houses. They'll circle.
Okay, I didn't know that, but that makes total sense. Vultures are scavengers. Yeah. Scavengers need a way to do that. Basically, yeah, you're releasing your gases, living or dead, and you're basically saying, eat at Joe, eat at Joe, eat at Joe. You're so vile, Mr. Yes, yeah, I am. I have a terrible sense of humor. So that is the end of the Spartacus rebellion, with crosses from Rome to Naples every few yards. And it is an unmistakable message. Do not bleep with your masters, unless they tell you to. Then Crassus has gotten some glory. And Spartacus was not an easy fight. Spartacus was a good general for some reason. Again, this is why a lot of people say he was probably Roman. But whatever he was, maybe he was a descendant of Hannibal, who knows? He lost. But Crassus still is the guy who burns Rome if you don't pay him, and he's the guy who beat a slave. Not enough glory. Now, the only civilized realm anywhere along Rome's borders is to the east. On the border of Roman Syria is, at this time, Parthia. Parthia takes over the old Persian lands of Iraq and Iran and the mountain areas. Now, the Parthians are not Greeks. The Seleucids are gone. Parthia is run by horse nomads from the Caspian Sea. I don't remember if they are Persian or Turkish, but they're a subset, and they're horse jockeys. They ride around and kill people, and they end up taking over this huge empire. And Crassus says, well, Pompey had the pirates, and he took over the Greek East, and Caesar's fighting up in Gaul. We'll get to him next. I'm going to fight the Parthians. So Marcus Licinius Crassus takes a handful, well, less than a handful, just under a handful of legions east. And these legions land in Roman Syria and start marching across the desert realm between Syria and Iraq, which is under Parthian control. And Crassus is going to beat them Parthians. He's going to show them what for. He's got a few legions to do it. Rome. But Rome's army is primarily foot soldiers, heavily armored foot soldiers, marching through the desert. What could go wrong? You remember when Alexander the Great's forces marched towards India? It's not quite as bad as that, but it's pretty bad. The Romans are roasting inside their armor. They're marching, not riding, except for Crassus. Of course, he's riding. And he has small units of scout cavalry. But the scout cavalry end up getting destroyed. How? Well, Crassus doesn't know, but what we know is the Parthians basically destroy any scouts, foot soldiers, or horse soldiers that go out from the Roman formation. The Parthians are screening the entire Roman formation as it slowly and predictably marches into the desert towards Ctesiphon, which is the Parthian capital. Ctesiphon spelled with a C, C-T-E-S, because I don't know. In any event, once the cavalry is neutralized, the Parthians begin to make themselves visible to the Romans. Now, the Romans did expect to go to oases and capture food supplies, and there's none of that. The Parthians are doing a scorched earth. When the Parthians show themselves, at first it makes the Romans nervous, and then the Romans get used to seeing the Parthians out beyond bow range. But then, let's assume that this line of tables and the following line of tables are the Roman legions. Crassus, where the TV is. And what the Parthians will do is they'll ride up slowly as the Romans march toward them. Ride. And then they'll get into range. And they'll start, shooting arrows and making the Romans angry and killing, Licinius over there. You shot Licinius! You jerks! And the Romans are then told to charge by Crassus. So the Romans charge because the Parthians are so close. But this is exactly what the Parthians are waiting for. The Parthians' horses turn around. But the Parthians have a special maneuver. It's something the Apaches did in the Old West. What the Parthians will do is, even though the horse is facing this way, they will swing around and ride backwards on their horse, shooting. Arrow after arrow, volley after volley. But they're not running that fast. They're keeping their horses a regular distance from the Romans. So the Romans, by human nature, keep running. Ah, we'll get him. We're almost there. We just have to. So you have this incongruous thing of armored foot soldiers, like human turtles, chasing Parthian horse archers, who are like the rabbit in that story, who are shooting at them as the Romans charge. This is not a good outcome for Rome. And this basic strategy, this basic tactic, should I say, is used again and again by the Parthians until, I think it's 4 legions. It might be, no, I think it's 4. Until 4 legions are destroyed at what history calls the Battle of Carrhae. Not Cannae, Carrhae. At the Battle of Carrhae, Parthian horse archers wither and wither and wither and finally kill the last of Crassus's army, including Crassus. They take the eagles. The eagle clutching the orb above where it says SPQR. Now, this is a big deal because the eagles are supposed to be gods of the specific legion. So if you're in the 13th Legion, you've got a legionary standard. That eagle is the physical manifestation of the god of the legion, the pagan Roman god of the legion. You let that eagle get stolen, you let that eagle fall into the mud, and the god is going to punish the entire legion. So being a standard bearer is like being a flag bearer on a battlefield today. We don't really do that anymore, but back in the day we did. And if you're a flag bearer, you're a big target. The enemy wants to shoot you. They want to see your flag go down. And with your last dying breath, you've got to keep the flag off the ground until somebody comes by and takes the flag from you, because the color should never touch the ground. Well, this comes from the Roman legionary standard. But the Romans actually believe that these eagles are gods. Small g, Roman, Greco-Roman god. So now Parthia has 4 of them. Oh, this is bad. It is one of the greater defeats that the Romans ever faced. Parthia, for hundreds of years, is going to be safe from Rome. Crassus is gone. The other 2 triumvirs, honestly, are happy to see him go. He was a bit of a jerk. And he was an X-Factor. Now, what that leaves is, aside from 4 dead legions and 4 eagles that are going to be in Parthian hands until Augustus's time, or later, it leaves Pompey in Rome, this time a middle-aged to older man, and the youngest of the first triumvirate, Gaius Julius Caesar. So we're going to talk about him now. Now, Gaius Julius Caesar comes from an impoverished branch of the Julian line. Caesar is not born normally. The way he is born is he's actually cut out of his mother, is today called a cesarean section or a C-section, because Caesar had to be taken out. His mother was not well. So Caesar is sort of a thin, sickly kid whose personal wealth isn't much until people die and he gets more. But he's an upper-class family. When he finally gets money, he's going to be a triumvirate. But before that happens, as a young man, Caesar is going to go on a world tour. This is before Pompey does most of these things. And this is still done by wealthy people today. You might call it a gap year or whatever, but either between high school and college or between college and getting a job, if you're wealthy, what you do, or maybe instead of college, is you travel the capitals of Europe. You go around and you spend some time in Paris, and you spend some time in Rome, and you spend some time in Athens and in Madrid and maybe Berlin and Rome and London, and hell, you might even go to St. Petersburg in Russia. You see the world. This was a big deal for the aristocrats that ruled the world before World War I. You go on what is called a grand tour. Well, young Gaius Julius Caesar, around your age actually, just a little younger, around 14, maybe some of you are, he's out in the east seeing the Greek world. He's a tourist. And he's on a ship, because that's the way you see the Greek world. You see it on a ship. And then his ship gets captured by pirates. Yar. Again, it's before Pompey cleanses the sea of them. And they kill everyone, except for the young Roman nobleman, who they're going to ransom for money. because he's worth more alive than dead. The others are either freed and they become pirates, or they are killed. But Caesar is alone, left alive, and free, and a prisoner from his ship. And the pirates say, "Yar, you're going to write a letter to your family." They don't really speak like that because it's ancient Rome, but I'm going to use the pirate voice because why not? I don't know I forget what day is National Speak Like a Pirate Day. I think it may be in October or something. But believe it or not, there is a National Talk Like a Pirate Day. Look it up. It's funny. So, "Yar, you're going to write a letter to your family, and you're going to tell them that if they don't pay lots of money," and they specify exactly how much, "we're going to mail you back in pieces. Your ear, your fingers, your toes, your male parts, all of that. We'll send them back until eventually they'll know you're dead, or you'd rather be dead." So Caesar does what he's told. And they send the letter off, and they're going to wait for a while. So the pirates eventually go back to their pirate base on a pirate island. It's all secret and stuff. They blindfold Caesar, and they think that's going to keep him from knowing where they are. But Caesar's pretty smart. He has a general idea of where they are. Anyway, in the pirate base, they let Caesar wander around free, because where's he going to go? He's on a pirate island surrounded by pirates. Yar. And Caesar is of the Julii, descendants from Venus. He is a charming young man. And he decides that what he's going to do is befriend the pirates. He's there, they're there. Might as well enjoy yourself. So he tells jokes, and he helps pirates out because he has number skills that they don't, and he has literacy that they don't. He gives advice to pirates who have love problems. Imagine a 30-year-old pirate. "Well, I don't know. My wife, she just drives me crazy." "Well, tell me about it." And Caesar is sort of a counselor. He becomes like the mascot of the pirate camp. They go by him and they scratch his hair for luck. They like him because they're going to make money from him, because of course his family's going to pay the ransom. And he's so charming, and he's so helpful, and he's funny. God, he tells jokes. And then eventually, the money comes, and the pirates decide the night before they're going to take Caesar out and drop him off somewhere. They like the guy so much. Hell, we're going to have a party. We're going to have a feast, a pirate feast. Yar. And so they eat, and they drink, and they make merry, and they all go, "Speech, speech, 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 speech." So Caesar gets up. And he says, "Gosh, you're the best bunch of guys a prisoner could ever want to have." Ah! And he tells some jokes, about Rufus over there with the red head. Eventually, he says, "Look, I've got to be serious at the end. You really need to understand something. After I get free, I'm going to use all my wealth to get a squadron of warships, and I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to kill all of you." Because there's a 14-year-old kid threatening a pirate base full of pirates. "I'm going to come back and kill you." And he's been so charming up until now. He's got to be joking. Of course he's joking. It's a joke. "Yeah, you're going to kill us." It's like Bambi killing Godzilla. Forget about it. You're such a kidder, Caesar. Yeah. So he leaves. They drop him off somewhere, and true to his word, he spends the next 2 or 3 years with a squadron of warships and some troops chasing down each and every one of those pirates. He finds the base, destroys it, and eventually tracks down the captain who was responsible for all of it. And as the captain is being crucified, Caesar says, nothing personal, but I told you this would happen. The captain says, "Yeah, you told me. You sure did." That's Caesar. And that's Caesar at your age. Okay? Caesar always compared himself to Alexander the Great. And he was always frustrated because Caesar doesn't really make his mark until he's older. But Alexander had nothing on young Gaius Julius Caesar except that his daddy was the king of a massive kingdom. Caesar certainly had something special that allowed him not just to decide to tell the pirates, "I'm coming after all of you," but to then make it happen. That's Caesar. He's charming, he's brilliant, he's very ambitious.
When they were sending the ransom letter, didn't he say like, "Oh no, that's too
That's
low.
too
I'm
low."
worth way more than
Yeah,
that."
yeah.
Yeah.
Which, what a guy. Thank you. I forgot that little detail. So, but it's a good detail.
Yeah.
So Caesar goes back, and Pompey sweeps the seas of pirates, and Caesar is going to become the third triumvir. He's young, he's from a very aristocratic family, but Caesar has populare tendencies. He sees himself as a man of the people, and he's going to represent the popular interests. And what Caesar wants, what he really wants, is to earn some glory, like Alexander. So what he's going to do, well, you've got Italy, which is definitely Roman. You've got the islands in North Africa, which are definitely Roman. You've got Iberia south of the Pyrenees, which is definitely Roman. And then you've got this thin coastal strip in what is today southern France that's Roman. It's called Narbonne, Narbonensis. But it constantly gets raided from the Celts to the north. And aside from the Massif Central, there's really no geographical barrier. So Caesar decides that he's going to go off the beaten track, away from the Mediterranean Sea, into the misty forests of northwest Europe. He is going to conquer the Gauls. So he gets an army of young hard chargers, proletarians mostly, but a few aristocrats too. And he marches north out of Italy into Gaul, and Pompey and Crassus, who are both alive at this time, go, "Yeah, Caesar, knock them out. Go kill those barbarians and enslave their children. It's going to be great." He's gone. We don't have to worry about him. If he wins, it'll take a long time, and he's beating barbarians. Big deal. So they're not too concerned. Also, they think that Caesar's popularity among the people of Rome is going to wane, is going to decline because Caesar's so far away. Did not know who they were dealing with. Because what Caesar starts doing is writing dispatches back to Rome. And these dispatches are not just for his family. They're not personal letters to his family. They're intended to be read by his clients at every wine bar in Rome, on the streets, as the men are drinking, at marketplaces. The clients go, and he has some pretty good rhetoricians, good speakers. And so Caesar's adventures, which is what they're billed as, include not just the descriptions of this alien countryside, and not just descriptions of these wild, barbaric people, but he tells stories about his troops and his officers, and it's like watching a TV show. You get to know the characters. You get invested in the struggles that they're facing. What will happen next week? And so the people of Rome actually begin to like Caesar more. A, because they keep hearing about him from his own voice. He cares enough to write and tell us what's going on in his life. What a guy. And he's not there. So he's not demanding anything from the people of Rome right now. He's still paying them. They're still his clients, so many of them are, because he's a triumvir. And he's got, they've got relatives in the army. Maybe my uncle Primus is going to be mentioned in dispatches. Now, if you take advanced Latin with Mr. Williams, I don't know whether he does it in Latin 3 or Latin 4, you will read excerpts from what we now call Caesar's commentaries on the Gallic Wars. But Caesar's commentaries on the Gallic Wars are not a proper history. They have a bunch of history in it. They tell us a lot about, say, the Battle of Alesia, or fighting different tribes, or siege warfare, or whatever. But their purpose is to sell Caesar to the Roman people as a heroic guy who loves the people of Rome, who is talented and uses those talents completely on behalf of the people of Rome. And the people of Rome's affection for him increases. His legend goes through the roof, into the sky, up among the stars. Crassus dies in of foolishness in Parthia. Pompey's getting old. Now, after about a dozen years, Caesar conquers Gaul, what is now France and Belgium and parts of Holland, parts of Switzerland. But that's not all, because Roman Gaul is being raided by Germans from across the Rhine River and by Britons who are Celts like the Gauls from across the English Channel. So Caesar not only conquers Gaul, which includes France and the Low Countries, he marches into Germany. Now, the Germans are more effective at primitive warfare than the Gauls are. And Caesar spanks them. He spends a while in Germany. Oh, there's a tribe. Do you submit? No. Oh, there's a tribe. Do you submit? No. And finally, they leave him alone. Oh, Caesar's coming. Get out of here. So they leave. And Caesar has basically told the Germans, if you bleep with Rome, you're going to get bleeped up. Lots of bleeping going on. They're soldiers. They talk in an earthy, salty fashion. But this is not all. Not only does he conquer Gaul, not only does he punish the Germans raiding into their territory, he actually invades Britain. He crosses the English Channel, which is not called the English Channel because the English aren't there yet, and he raids around Britain doing the same thing. Hey, Druids, are you going to lead your Celts into Gaul? Yeah. Are you gonna leave? Yeah.
Caesar has one of the only actual written accounts of Druids that there are.
Yes.
There's like very few of them. I
Yeah.
watched a super cool documentary about Druids.
Interesting. Now, the Druids are the priests of the Celtic people. They're nature priests. They're big into human sacrifice. This is something you've got to understand. The Druids are not nice modern Wiccans who just want to love. They're not white magic people. The Druids do some pretty dark stuff, but they're a very effective enemy. And yes, Caesar does write about them. Now, again, what we know of the Druids comes from the Romans. It's like what we know of the Etruscans comes from the Romans. In fact, a lot of what we know about the ancient Germans come from the Romans. But Caesar, after smacking the Britons around, comes back. And now it's time to go home. And that's where we're going to leave things until next time. Caesar is thinking about coming home. Any questions, comments, or thoughts? So, in Roman history, what did you learn today? Caesar did. Bye. Remember Monday.